Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Dima, very, very nice to have you here on the podcast. Alhamdulillah, very, very happy to have you and speak with you about a very, very important matter, Islamic finance. I'm sure, some of the viewers are not familiar too much with it, like myself, I'm learning. I know the basics. But I'm not a financial expert. But I think it takes a whole lot to be a financial expert in that field. And I think Dima has quite a good understanding, let's say, of the financial world. Um, Please tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the finance world in the first place, and then maybe as well the shift into the Islamic finance.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wasahbihi wa man wala. Thank you very much, brother. It's a pleasure to be here and hopefully share something that's beneficial that I've been involved in the industry for over 15 years in total. So a little bit of background about myself. I was a banker for more than 15 years. My first job was at Citibank at the time during the 2008 financial crisis. So, moving back from Singapore and the US at the time back to Indonesia, where I got into Citi, then I learned the basic of banking, investment banking, corporate finance, etc. And after 7 years of career there in Jakarta and Hong Kong, I moved to a French bank, SocGen, also in the corporate investment banking division. And after 3 years, then I kind of have different moments of reflection on what I should be doing in this world. And after a couple of muhasabah, I decided to quit banking and contribute whatever knowledge that I have over the last 10 years in banking into something that would be beneficial for the Ummah, which is Islamic finance. So, like early disclaimer, I didn't really learn Islamic finance theoretically from school or a course, but more on the observation, independent learnings through discussions, public sources, and but then I have co-founders that really understand well about these things. So I'm more of a finance and investment guy, trying to set up the Islamic FinTech company back in 2018. And it evolved, alhamdulillah, to become a full-fledged Islamic digital bank in Indonesia over the last 6 years of our journey.
Wow, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. Mashallah, that's amazing. So you are actually now building a fintech bank in Indonesia. Is it the first of its kind, or um, is there a lot more?
Mhm.
Because from what I know, it's quite early for such an application.
Yeah, I think Indonesia is we're not an Islamic country, but we're Muslim majority countries. Hence, the regulations is more familiar and more accommodating to the needs of the Muslims. So we have the Islamic banking system within our financial industry as well. So Islamic banking itself, it's not new, although it's not as early as the conventional banking system in the country. It was started in the early 90s and it experienced I would say, the hibernation moment because of different kind of crisis in Southeast Asia, especially Indonesia. And it only picked up again in 2005, where the National Sharia Council declared that riba is haram in 2005. And it started to, grow sustainably and faster in a faster rate than the conventional banking world. However, the Islamic banking industry here in Indonesia and in many other different geographies typically has a lack of, I would say, the innovation spirit, just because typically these are a subsidiary or a business unit of a bigger conventional banks, right? So um, naturally, there's less capital expenditures, less focus that being put, especially in the digitalization process of the industry worldwide. More often Islamic banks would get left behind and will be picked up later. So this is what's happening in Indonesia. So when we talk about Islamic banks, yes, we have several Islamic banks in the country, but we're talking about the Islamic digital banks where I would say the banking industry is gearing towards like digitalization. It's only a handful.
Okay.
And a lot of them also are just a small business unit within a digital bank, or those who are, I would say they try, some people trying to kind of seize the market, but hasn't been able to crack it yet. So we are uniquely positioned because we are coming from fintech, Sharia compliant lending companies, and then we acquired a small Islamic bank and we turned it into a digital bank. So we have two licenses. We have the Sharia compliant peer-to-peer lending, and we have the Sharia bank as well. So in running our business, we are more flexible than many others financial institutions because we have these two businesses. So there are a lot of synergy between these two.
Mashallah, this is something I was searching for, So fintech, Islamic FinTech bank. Are you already fully operating, or are you still in the like beta startup phase?
We're already full operating, so we have about 100,000 customers now because the bank itself, we just after we acquired it in 2021, we just launched it in early 2023, and we've been growing organically given where the market is. So we'd like to be more conservative in terms of the growth rather than on the aggressive side of things. Um, and on the lending side, we've lent more than 300 million US dollars equivalent to a lot of, I would say, small medium businesses in Indonesia, especially to the impact segment like farmers, like smallholders, fishermen, all of these things, right? So I think coming back to the concept of impact and sustainability, I feel like we literally own it, as Muslims. I mean, our principles is obviously there since 1,400 years ago. It's just when the whole world or the financial industry is moving on the sustainable financing, etc. I think we kind of late on owning things that belong to us. So having said that, I think with technology, with like different business model, I would like to push that as an Islamic financial institutions. I think only it's only natural if we also target the underbank and even the non-bank, the bottom of the pyramid.
Sure.
And sometimes they require financing to help on their daily endeavors, and sometimes they need the help like social finance. So I think there's also something that going forward we're gonna explore on how to channel the social finance element of Islamic finance effectively, namely the zakah or the waqf or the sadaqah, obviously.
Allahumma barik. That's a very good project, because at the same time you solve problems of people, and at the same time you stay Sharia compliant. At the same time you created an ecosystem for Islamic businesses, which is really really good. And inshallah we see more of these type of businesses growing. And I know for a fact there is a lot coming out of Southeast Asia, specifically out of Indonesia and Malaysia, because they're setting the ground now for all of these startups, definitely. So let's get a little bit into the questions what many people have about Islamic finance, because we hear Islamic finance, we hear the word riba, we hear the word when somebody wants to take a mortgage or something, there is interest to pay. let's just dive into there a little bit and get a few questions because I think we really don't understand, or many of us don't really understand what we actually putting our mind and our feet, our family, our money into every single day, you know? So can you just give us a quick overview? What distinguishes Islamic finance from conventional finance?
Sure. So I think it has different layers. So let me just start with like I would say the essence or like the philosophy. I think like Islamic finance, it's more like Sharia compliant finance, as a lot of people in the industry call it. It's basically the way to do business or the way to, manage your money or getting, borrowings, loans, and all financing to be exact, according to the Sharia law, which everything is okay unless there is things that make it haram, right? Like the riba, the gharar, and the zulm and all of these things. So the what do you call it? The original law of trade is everything allowed unless it's like on the other side, like ibadah. Ibadah is like everything is haram until there's a dalil or the
Okay.
ayah or hadith is it. So yeah, I think that's kind of like first thing that people need to understand. Now, what would be the one that is considered haram? A lot of them would involve the riba. I think this is one of the key elements of Islamic finance, that there's like no riba in the structure or in the economies of Islamic finance. And riba is essentially like split into two, like the riba nasiya, because of people lending money and get the benefit out of it just because it's have a repayment period, or riba fadl, which means like when you exchange two things that is similar with different quantity, like 10 grams
Okay.
of gold getting exchanged with 12 grams of gold, for example. Um, on the practicality, I think uh, people tend to avoid or needs to avoid riba, like financial institution also trying to do that. So the way they structure the financing is not lending money and getting interest as a result, but more on profit sharing. Now, the key here is sharing risk, right? So profit sharing means it's essentially an equity participation. That's why in some countries like Turkey, it's called participation banking. So the banks actually participate in terms of growing the business of the customers. Hence, they would have more risk on doing so. Or, like for example, when you're buying a house, then people tend to use the trading structure or murabaha, the buy and sell. So the bank would or the finance company would buy the house first or the car first and then sell at profit with an installment plan, right? So these are the structures that it make it different than the conventional rather than just purely getting a loan. And then people ask like, isn't it the same? Because essentially when we calculate on paper, typically the interest equivalent is just the same, right? So I think this is where when people delve deeper into the concept, then people would know that it although on paper the profit level is similar, but when things go south, the treatment is very different. When people got indebted and need to pay interest, typically there's a compounding element of the interest that's getting bigger and bigger. The later you pay the interest-bearing
Yes.
loan, the it's snowballing, right? Like basically, while on profit sharing or the buy and sell structure, upon late payment, typically this doesn't get compounded, right, at all. So if there's any financial institution, and it also depends on the geography and the national ijtihad of the ulama. Sometimes they can charge late payment fee, but they couldn't recognize it as revenue, so there is no conflict of interest of the financial institutions as well. So essentially, if we look at the spirit of Islamic finance, it's really all about fairness. Um, Laymen, when they look at very microscopic view of a transaction might not see a meaningful difference. But in different scenarios, or if we consolidate or amalgamate like a lot of different transactions, then it could, results in a total destruction like the global financial crisis, or it actually can weather any crisis because the structure is very clear, the accountability is also very clear. Usually like if it's like pure loan, so for example, I need a loan and you give me a loan because I need to do surgery of my family member, right? And Omar, can you loan me $10,000 for this? And loan in Islam is a social instrument to help people, right? So the reward is actually from Allah. So if I ask you as a Muslim, then you give me 10,000, then I need to repay you 10,000, right? Because it's a qard al Hasan. You shouldn't get any benefit out of that, right? But then what's happening in, the world, like the non-Islamic world, is that you'll charge interest, right? So I'm in need and you give me a way out, but then you exploit it, right? And there wouldn't be if I meet you in between in some events, I would not have dignity upon myself, right? And dignity as a human being, as a Muslim, is a very important concept in Islam. But if it's alone, then the dignity remains intact because you're helping me. I'm not indebted to you, although I need to repay you. And even upon late payment, we're advised to collect in a beautiful way, right? Remind in a beautiful way, need to do sabr and all of these things. So yeah, I think it's Islamic finance is really a beautiful concept. And when I spoke with non-Muslim in financial institutions, like the IFC, etc. And when I explain about this, they're actually shocked because it is a beautiful concept for humanity. It's just like it doesn't get mainstream for a lot of reasons.
I think the thing is that mainstream from Western media, maybe, because obviously they want to guard their gains through these type of channels, and it's 100% that it's a lot of gains for them. So don't get me wrong, because
Mm,
when you live outside of the Western world, I mean, it's much bigger anyway, and there's much more financial institution, but the media streaming is not yet so high. But I
mm,
can see a big interest in Islamic finance in general. I'll just give you one example. For example, if you want to buy a house, an apartment in the UAE, you have a down payment of 5%. I don't know if you're familiar with how they handle it. And then you have like
mhm,
you pay another 10% a few months later, and then you pay every year up to 10. I think it's up to from 8 to 15 years. You pay every year 20%, like in total. So if it's the apartment is like $150,000, you pay these $150,000 all the time, like in 20% steps. There is
mhm,
nothing added. There is no percentage added, nothing. So you pay this, and it's good. But if
mm,
the house goes, if, for example, you go with a developer which is not the best developer, or
mhm,
he gets into trouble or anything like that, you go down with him. But if it goes good, you go up with him and you get your apartment and
mm,
you didn't pay any riba, anything, and you get your keys and
mm,
that's it. And a really normal manner. You don't have to, go to the bank and beg for credit or anything like that. You really get your keys in the hand as long as you keep up with the payments, which don't include anything haram. So this is one of the examples I think is really good, where they already did a big effort. Obviously, the
mm.
costs what they have is within the price. You
Yes, of
understand?
course.
But still, if we
Which
look at
is
it,
fine. I mean, that's buy and sell, right? There's
exactly,
normal business
exactly,
activity.
exactly. So this is already very interesting, and I can see a shift in many countries which are doing this now. And Malaysia, I think, is one of the countries where I've seen it, like already 10 years ago, that when I had a private account, that I got something called Hiba back. Which I find very, very nice. It was CIMB Islamic Banking. So it was
Mm,
very it's a very good concept, and I see, like I said, I see an adaptation in the world right now. So how do you see it? I mean, we don't see it in mainstream media a lot, and we know why. But in general, do you see like other countries, like in the Western world, going searching actually for these type of banks within their countries, or maybe fly to the UAE, or fly to Saudi, or
Mm,
fly to Malaysia in order to open such accounts to not get these
mm,
these forcibly riba payments on you.
mm. Yeah, a lot of my experience is actually on the Muslim market, like Indonesia, but I know since my wife is French, for example, she used to work in like mortgage independent mortgage company in France. So they have some product partner that can offer Islamic or compliance financing actually, but it's to selected clients, and I think the average Joes might not be able to even know that such, solution exists because the country, some countries they are, they don't want to be too bold about it as well because of the
Yeah.
politics, etc. Right? But I know in the UK, for example, there are a lot of demands. I think there have been a lot of Islamic FinTech startups as well, then trying to accommodate this in Australia as well. And I think in the US, they're starting to proliferate as well. But, given the complexity and the tenure of how long people would pay for that, if the balance sheet, of the financial institution itself is not that strong, I think there supposed to be a limit on how big such initiative can go. And this is what been faced by our friends, our brothers in Australia, for example. From what I heard is that, there are a lot of demands, but the supply on the capital is limited, whereas if you're a bank, then you have more instruments to access long-term capital typically, right? But then, unfortunately, in a lot of the Western market, the concept of Islamic bank is not there. So it's very hard. I know someone that I know applying for an Islamic digital bank in the UK with the key product of home ownership financing. Very hard by BOE. Yeah. So I guess this is also a challenge where, but I feel like such initiative could be started by an Islamic bank, maybe the bigger ones, in Muslim majority market. And when the scale is there, then possibly they can launch such products in different markets as well with the local partner, for example. So I guess that should make sense. But again, as you know, like big banks, typically their overheads, their ways of working, it's already it's what we call it is monolithic, right? It's not that agile enough. So
Yeah.
I think it's up to the next generation of banking institutions or financial institutions that can scale and try to use that balance sheet out to different countries. But I guess that requires a lot of collaboration, exploration, and obviously innovation when it comes to the technology part of things.
I think the technology, the fintech, it will change a lot because we can then go international, and we are not anymore bound to a country, or to a place where we live. In general, now it's still hard. It's still hard because of the legislation within the country, as you already mentioned, because some countries don't want to transfer such, for example, when you want to buy a house or anything of that kind, or start a business, that you get transferred, for example, from Indonesia to the UK. I think it's not the norm. I'm not sure how many times it does happen that it really exists, but I think for now it's not possible that you have like those type of transactions with the person living somewhere else, and getting a loan from another country. because he decided that maybe this bank is better. So maybe in the future we will see as well more of these type of transactions when we have like money more decentralized with many organisms we can work with and do it then, yeah, and on the transactional basis all over the world.
Yeah.
For concerning the buying a house, there was just a question that I had as well, because Muslims obviously in the Western world try to buy a house. As already explained, in Dubai or anything, there is no problem as long as you have cash flow. You can, without any percentage or mortgage or penalty or any of that kind, you can buy a house. Now in Western countries, how does it work? I mean, can we have access in, because you mentioned you have access to some Islamic mortgages, or is this completely out of the window? Like, do you have to do the middle
Mm.
way? And is it recommended to do such a thing?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's pros and cons, and I guess it is also depends like you know I believe it depends on situation because I guess every situation is different, every country is different. So I know that some like a very well-known sheikh uh, released a fatwa that in the Western world like it's okay to buy a house with riba for the first house, for the primary house, but then obviously with it's a little bit not sure when the fatwa was issued. I think it's by Sheikh Yusuf Qardawi. But I guess now with more options, maybe people would want to look at alternative options, and because at that time probably there are not many options available. And second is I think with the trend of the younger generation, I think the trend is also not buying a property, but more on rental, right?
Yes.
I think it's all about yeah, all over the world, especially people travel, etc. So there's rent to own structure, which in Islamic terms is the ijara montahiyah bitamlik. So if there's a company that offer that scheme like rent to own, probably worth visiting for. And well, it really rented, and then I mean I'm in the startup world, like so it's like go big or go home kind of things. So inshallah, if it's go big, have a cash and buy it myself. Other flip side or other view on that is that how Muslim can build generational wealth if the asset is not there for to be passed down to children as well, right? So there's been like this discussion with the, obviously the Western Muslims on that side as well. And sometimes it's not only because there's no Islamic instrument available, but also because a lot of the Muslims in the Western world were probably in the lower economic tier, even on getting like a mortgage from the bank as well, right? So there's that angle as well. But I think for me, more on the conservative side, well, better just be there for my kids, inshallah, in the future. So I will probably tend to go that side.
Understand. Yeah, like I said, you're right. When you're traveling and everything, the rent to buy or just renting, we never. I mean, you can say it like this, you can say it on the other way. Some people live till 90, some people live till 40, 50. We don't know. We don't know. So I think as well, I believe as well, like this is my opinion, has nothing to do with anything that I learned
Mhm.
or any scholar. For my opinion is as well, rent a place. If you want, you can buy, if you have the cash. And if not, just keep you living your life and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a way out. And the ways will
Yeah.
come. And we're not obliged anymore. We're in a different world right now than our parents, which needed to buy houses or buy an
Hmm.
apartment. And it's a complete different world. And I think as well, the price structures are now completely different. Like the it's
Hmm.
not anymore like accessible for a normal salary or something. to access like a property which costs 1 million.
Yeah,
It's
true.
very out of hand. It's very out of hand. So yeah, I share the same
Mm.
yeah, the same thoughts as you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to come back. Sorry, yeah, I interrupt you.
No, no, no. I mean, I think it's
Okay.
just like it's financial discipline, right? Like, it's best not to expose yourself to a debt because then you don't have that flexibility when there's a crisis coming. Like, for example, if you get fired from the company, you couldn't find any other job, then supposedly you can lower your your lifestyle, but when you have a debt on like long-term debt, then you lose that flexibility to adjust as well. Mm.
Let's go to the last phase. I just wanted to ask you about your company at the moment. Like, how can we get in contact with you? How can we be a part of this? And how can we, yeah, maybe even work with you, even if we are from outside, from other countries? Are we able to sign up with your bank as well?
Mm. Mm. Yeah, so at this moment, unfortunately, we are on the banking side. We're still serving like Indonesian citizen given the regulatory around it. However, we are trying to obviously find ways on how to accommodate um, Sharia compliant investment, small medium businesses here in Indonesia. So a lot of the problem when I speak with Muslims in the West is that some of them, they are actually on the high end of the spectrum, and they have this cash and then product that is Sharia compliant. So this is also something that we are working. And I think, on that, I think for the next year, we're still going to be focusing a lot on the domestic market, but we're going to start looking into different partnership in, you know, expanding our presence elsewhere. And I think in terms of expansion to different geography, we would prefer to have local partners. So I think when we're ready, then obviously we want to meet as many like-hearted Muslims as possible to kind of work together with us in tapping new markets. And in addition, I think from time to time we're also trying to check our, you know, marketing piece or content, or if there's any ideas that we can bring it into Indonesia as well. For example, the understanding of the concept of, let's say, Islamic finance in Western Muslims sometimes can get can be deeper than the Eastern Muslims. So, for example, I read an article in Yakin Institute how Muslims should look into wealth. And it's like mind blowing, right? Because I guess when we talk about Islamic finance or Islamic banks in this part of the world, when people in the West, like I read an article by Dr. Osman Omarji on how Muslims' relationship with wealth, and getting into more like the essence, right? Like the concept of wealth in this dunya is temporary, and the eternal one is the one that's being spent in the way of Allah. Uh, I think when we talk about Islamic banking, a lot of people don't get that much of a difference with the conventional banking. Is a lot of these Islamic bankings is actually being run only purely as a business to tap into the Muslim market to answer the needs of the Muslims, right? Which is like good and nothing's wrong with that. But I guess a lot of these banks like lost their soul. Why an Islamic bank would be drastically different when it comes to experience, positioning, etc. Because a lot of these Islamic bankers sometimes they got too busy in the structure and the business side of things. They lost track of why the essence or the raison d'être, right? Or why they're there. So in this part of the world, when we talk about Islamic banks, Islamic FinTech, etc., a lot of the discussion doesn't touch the spirituality. It doesn't touch the heart, right? The essence. So that's why a lot of the discussions in the West is probably deeper on that side, right? So that's why I'm happy to, talk to Muslims in the West that really understand the concept comprehensively, than just to exchange notes or thoughts, and how we can implement that and introduce that to people here in Indonesia, for example, because when you get into the younger generations, they do business with you, according to the mission, to the spirit, right? A lot of uh, the Gen Z, when they choose a brand that represent the spirit, that represent the passion and values. So if we come up as an Islamic bank, it's just like the other one, I don't think it will move the needle. So what we're trying to do at Hijra Group is to not only coming up with the best products through a digital channel, but also how we can offer the different experience by being true to our values, by as we grow our bank, we need to give more benefits to the society, right? Not only increasing the profit that we make with no impact to the society, but we need to also measure the values for the people around us, the people that doesn't necessarily bank with us directly, and our brothers outside, like how we can doing well while doing good by being true to our principles. How we can make our users have more taqwa, for example, right? That's why UI UX for us is very important. We put prayer reminder on top of the account balance, for example, to remind like the time left for the next prayer, for example. So small things like this really matters because that shows that the bank itself put a lot of effort in terms of what kind of bank that we want to be, um, what kind of partner to the Muslim communities. So yeah, I mean we're even thinking about gamification. Where if Ant Financials has Ant Forest, being sustainable, growing your forest, plant more trees, and UOB from Singapore, they have this Tomorrowland that you build, as you grow your savings, that you build like better city, more modern cities. We're even toying around with the ideas of how can we, let's say, gamify creating our house in Jannah, for example, by doing good deeds. Of course, it's not going to be the real thing, but at least it's nudge people's behavior and makes people wonder, right? And all constantly reminding them by while they're doing banking, which is almost everyday thing that people do, they always get reminded of the final resting place, so to speak. I think that will be very beautiful. It will be a different ways to do banking, and based on that, I feel like inshallah Muslims can appreciate that more beyond. You have the fastest transactions, you have fastest loading time, more modern UI UX, etc. So yeah, we're trying to get into that level.
I think this is a very, very good vision. Allahumma barik. This is next level thinking, This is um,
Oh.
much needed for the financial world. And I think we can, or you already started, it's not that we can start, you already started in Indonesia to actually implement what you're thinking. And I see a very bright future, inshallah, for all startups which are going into finance. And now you understand, that this is very unique in Southeast Asia. Not all countries are accepting tech startups or banking startups within their country because it's a monopoly, and most of the time it belongs to the state, and
Mm.
there's a lot of different things. So I think Indonesia is very advanced in this stage, and I wish, inshallah, that a lot of Muslim countries will follow with a concept like this, although they have already a concept like that. But I think with the vision, what you mentioned, and actually um, to think about more about as well about be reminded about the akhirah, okay, but because you can be rich in this world, but you can as well be rich in the akhirah, and if there is a
Mm,
bank which helps you to do both of these
mm,
sides, without missing out or without going like thinking that you go in the wrong way in the finance, because if you think about all day, there's always traps from shaitan every day. So
yeah.
if the banking has as well these traps, what you going to do then? You
Mm,
know what I mean? So if this is a good way, then I think there is already a good, because we spend so much time with
mm,
transactions all day and every day, so it would be really great to have this one sorted out. Then we can at least focus on the business instead of thinking about our bank, what we do, what we should not do. So it's one of the most important. Now, when I speak to you, I see it's one of the most important factors in our business life and personal life to have an Islamic bank.
mm. Yeah, because I guess from the ancient times, the economy would be revolve around banking sector, right? Like banking is like a vein of the economy. If the blood circulation is a bad blood or dark, then the surrounding economies will be dark as well, right?
Exactly.
When we
Yes.
see the Renaissance, for example, like who supported, I mean, we're getting into a little bit of history here. Like who supports the Renaissance movement? It's the banking family in Italy, right? First and foremost is the Medici family that commissioned the artwork by Leonardo da Vinci, being a patron of art, but the main business is riba, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like if Islamic banks that true to the value, no compromise, can actually grow, and we can start to see like in Indonesia itself, there's already a case study of a company called Paragon. They're selling halal beauty product for cosmetics and personal care, and they grow because they're opening up this halal segment in Indonesia, and they're now the largest beauty company in Indonesia, beating Unilever, L'Oreal, and all of these things. And their marketing approach, because they're focused on halal product, is to help dakwah. So they sponsor different ulamas coming to Indonesia to give talks. They're supporting local ulamas. They're supporting, different Islamic initiatives and all of these things, right? And there's more goodness that comes out of selling that product and the marketing budget then being spent, and it circulates back to the brand. So obviously it's inspired us as well to do the same thing, but there's already a proven model where if the pillars of the economy is, people that align with the value, inshallah, uh, things around will be also blessed as well.
I think so as well. And when you mention Paragon, it's funny because I actually bought, when I was in Malaysia, I always bought the beard oil, for the beard, called
Uh,
calf, called calf. I'm sure you know it, yeah.
Kaf, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they sold it
Kaf
already,
is the largest man brand in Indonesia, overtaking
Ah, okay.
Garnier last year.
Okay. I didn't know that,
Mm.
So I bought it randomly because I liked the name. So there were all these other
Yeah,
products. So I said, yeah, I have to buy this one, But I didn't really know that was from Indonesia
yeah,
until I did a research, and
yeah,
I wanted to talk with them, but that's another story, but still about another product. But that's very, very interesting, the calf. And I wish them much success,
yeah,
because the product is not only that it looks good, it's as well good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, mashallah. So that's why I think we need more and more examples like this that might hopefully inspire Muslim all around the world that
Inshallah.
they can do it, being running a business that is not compromising with value and adding goodness to the world.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, that's definitely a very, very nice talk. Allah Mubarak. It's great to talk to you, Alhamdulillah. Maybe, next time in person, inshallah, when we're back in Southeast Asia. But it was
inshallah.
definitely a great talk, and it's very, very
Sure.
interesting. I will try to find out more about your business, about what you're all doing, and I wish you much, much success, inshallah.
Ya Allah barik fik. Jazakallah khair for the time.
Jazakallah.
Enjoyed talking with you as well and look forward to meet you in person, inshallah.